All right, well, welcome everybody to the Measure K Oversight special meeting this evening on Thursday, October 21st. I am currently the vice chair of the Oversight Committee, so I'll be chairing the meeting tonight in lieu of our past chair, who has decided not to continue with us. This is a special meeting in which it's informative. We're going to learn more about the Brown Act, and for our new members, we'll learn about each other and also learn about the Oversight Committee and what we do. So officers will be elected later in the evening, and I will now call this meeting to order and ask for the roll call, please. Juanita?
Jim Bonato.
Here.
Ashley Carrillo.
Here.
Gary Hook.
Here.
Paul Maxwell.
Here.
Eslam Najjar.
Here.
John Pollock.
Here.
All right, looks like we have everybody here. If you have any noise in the background, I'd like to ask that you mute your microphone until you wish to speak. So we'll move on to public comment at this particular point. The public is welcome at this time to address the Measure K Oversight Committee on items within the committee's purview, but not listed on the agenda. There will be an opportunity to comment on agenda items requiring votes at the time they are discussed. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And if you wish to comment, please contact us through Zoom at www.zoom.us. Click on Join a Meeting and enter in the following information. Our meeting ID number is 978-6315-4829. Passcode is 102774. If you don't have access to join the Zoom meeting or prefer to use the phone, you can give us a call at area code 669-900-6833. At this time, you may use the raise hand feature in Zoom to let us know that you wish to make a public comment. If you are calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. You'll be brought into the meeting when it is your turn to speak. Once told it is your turn to speak, press *6 to unmute yourself if calling by phone, and we ask that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Ling, do we have anyone out there waiting to provide public comment?
Not at this time.
Wonderful. That makes it easy. Okay. So we'll move on now to item number 1. Excuse me, I'll close the public comment period. And now we'll move on to item number 1, which is an overview of the Brown Act by the City Attorney, Janet Colson. Janet?
Okay, let's see. We practiced this beforehand. Let's see here, share screen. I think it's this. And I think. Okay. So I have a number of slides here about the Brown Act. Everybody can hear me well and everything's fine? Okay. So I have a number of slides about the Brown Act. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly, but I'll take questions at the end. This is an overview, and one of the things that I did take out were discussion on closed session and remedies and cure, because that's really for council. Council can go into closed session, but it would be unusual to find a topic where this Measure K committee could go into a closed session. So just briefly, it starts back in the 50s in San Francisco, where there was a newspaper 10-part series on Your Secret Government because a reporter from the Chronicle did a sort of research into government meetings. They were supposed to be done in public, but he discovered there were a lot of secret meetings happening. And that was in 1952. And so out of that came a decision for a new state open meeting law. And so Assemblymember Ralph M. Brown, where the act gets its name, carried the legislation. And the Brown Act has evolved quite a bit since that time. Every few years, there's amendments to it. And so it's a very different piece of legislation than it originally started out to be. Pretty comprehensive now. So 2 parts of the Brown Act have not really changed since adoption in the 50s. And it's the purpose section. So the legislature finds that the public's business basically is best done in the open, and deliberations be conducted openly, no closed door, backroom meetings, none of that stuff. So the public has a right to know what their government is doing so that they can participate and help inform the government, help them to govern the people. The purpose of this is to ensure that the public's business is done in the public, and it's open and available to public scrutiny. And it's very restrictive, but that is in fulfilling the purpose of the act. There are really strict rules. You cannot meet privately, and you'll see when going through this presentation, it kind of carries it to an extreme sometimes when you don't have any intent to violate the act, but you could unknowingly, very innocently, be violating the act because they have some pretty strict requirements about meeting with each other. Act applies to local agencies, legislative bodies, and it also applies, most importantly, to people who are elected to a legislative body prior to assuming the office. So if you have an election in November, but you don't take office until December or sometimes January, the act covers you from the moment you are elected. So you are required to comply with the Brown Act as far as meeting with people is concerned, even prior to taking the oath of office. There's a description for a local agency. It includes counties, cities, towns, school districts, municipal corporations, and any kind of subordinate body, any board, commission, or agency of any of those. So the city of Pleasant Hill, this Measure K body is a subordinate body to the council, to the legislative body. So the legislative body is a governing body, the city council, and also can be a board, commission, committee created by formal action of the council. And in some cases, the Brown Act does apply to private organizations, very limited circumstances, mostly public hospitals. So it's found in the government code. The act is found in the government code. And the default, I guess you could say, is that all meetings have to be open in public, except when the Brown Act specifically authorizes a closed meeting. And you can't have any closed meetings unless it's specifically authorized under the act. So the default situation is that meetings have to be in the open and public unless they fit under one of the exceptions. And that's the closed session exceptions. So we're going to talk about what is a meeting and when is a meeting not a meeting. Basically, what is the definition of meeting? And the definition of meeting is any gathering of a majority of the members of the body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate upon any matter under their jurisdiction. And you don't have to take any action for a meeting to have occurred. Conversations between and among members of a legislative body about issues that are within your jurisdiction is all that's required. So, Jim sees Gary on Islam at the at Starbucks, and you have a quorum meeting talking about an action or something that's going to happen at the body, something that's coming before you, something that's under your jurisdiction, that would constitute a meeting. Now, there are a lot of things that are not a meeting. You can have individual contacts with members of the public. You can go to a conference or seminar with your fellow committee members. You can go to a community meeting, anything that's purely social or ceremonial. You can go to a standing committee meeting of your own body. Oh dear, let me get rid of that. Meetings with other legislative bodies, as long as they are, you can go to attend, say, a planning commission meeting or something, as long as they're not discussing issues related to your Measure K. You know, a quorum of the Measure K people can go and attend a planning commission meeting. One of the places where people get tripped up quite a bit is in what is called a serial meeting. And this is any use of any kind of communication. It can be people, can be phones or texting or email. Any device or any kind of communication employed by a majority of the body to develop a collective concurrence on something that is within your jurisdiction is prohibited. So serial meetings sometimes happen when you're talking to each other. Member A talks to member B talks to member C and says, I just talked to A, and he said such and such. Member C goes and talks to member D, and so on. That's what a serial meeting is. Or member A sends an email to member B. Member B takes it and forwards it to member C. You see how that serial type of meeting can occur. That's prohibited. That's not allowed. And as we said, personal meeting, telephone, email, written correspondence, use of intermediaries and other people. You know, you're talking to somebody else and you say, well, I can't talk to another member of my committee, so you go tell them. And you know, you use somebody else to go and deliver a message. Social networking sites. This is a new part of the Brown Act. Social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter, these things have also been, the legislature has decided to include these things as devices or ways that you can have a serial meeting. So elements of a serial meeting are a series of communications between less than a quorum, but taken as a whole involves a majority, and there's a concurrence reached. It either you talk about the issue and you clarify, you advance an understanding of it, you facilitate an agreement or a compromise among members, or you advance an ultimate resolution of an issue. So basically, you're talking about something that's under your jurisdiction that you're going to do something about, that this sort of deliberation that should be happening in public, it's not, it's happening in private. And so while you can talk to one other person and be okay, as long as that other person, that other member of your committee doesn't go and then proceed to talk to somebody else, and so that you build a quorum, a consensus among a quorum outside of the meeting. So chain is, as I said, member A speaks to member B, who speaks to member C, and so forth. You carry it on down the chain. Hub and spoke is you have an intermediary who talks to A and then goes and talks to B, relaying whatever A said, and then goes and talks to C, relating whatever A and B have said. And so that's how you can get a concurrence through what is known as a hub and spoke. You see this right here. This is the person talking to member A, going and talking to member B, going and talking to C. But the important thing is when they go and talk to B, they're telling them what A said. When they go and talk to C, they're telling them what A and B have said. And so you see how you're developing a collective concurrence that way. There are some exceptions. And so I can come to each one of the members of a committee or meet with you individually, and I can give you a one-way flow of information. I can tell you something. So there's an item that's coming up on your agenda. This is what it's about. This is the information I want you to know about that. That's okay. And then after I go to A, I go to B and I say the same thing. And then I go to C and I say the same thing. That staff member communicating a one-way flow of communication to each member on the committee, that's fine, because I'm not telling B what A thought or said to me. I'm not telling C what A and B said to me. So I'm not the hub of that wheel. I'm not conveying that information. I'm just giving you a one-way flow of information. So it does not mean a back and forth sharing of views. And we can also talk if we're going to need to call a special meeting. Let's say Jim wants to call a special meeting. He can call Gary saying, are you available on Thursday? Or send an email out to everybody saying, are you available on Thursday? We need to have a special meeting. There's nothing about that communication that's anything that's under your jurisdiction. It's merely scheduling. So in use of email, to avoid a serial meeting, you want to refrain from replying to all. That's the really big takeaway from this piece of this slide, is refrain from applying to all. In an email, don't take a position or make a commitment. If you're going to send out information, just send the information out. Don't say, look at this, I found it interesting, I think it's believable, everybody should look at it, it really influences my take on such and such an item. None of that. But if you want to send out just pure information to everybody, then just send the information, no commentary. But be very careful with it, because if it's an opinion piece about something that's going to come before you, perhaps it could be somebody could look at that and say, well, member A is actually communicating his or her position to the rest of the body. And that would be not a good thing to do. Social media, as I said, the legislature has added in social media to the serial meeting prohibitions. So you don't want to get on social media and engage in a discussion about something that's going to be part of your jurisdiction, something that's going to come before you. It doesn't have to be a physical meeting, obviously. It's using a device, it's using social media. But a series of comments to a blog or news article, if you comment on something, and it even goes as far as liking different things. If people see that, Jim or Gary or whomever, liked something, they can infer that that means that they're supportive of it. And that's as good as getting out there and telling the rest of your committee members that you are in favor of something. And this has to be, of course, something that's going to come before you and it's part of your jurisdiction. So there was AB 992, which was effective last September, tried to do some clarification about serial meetings and social media as far as the Brown Act is concerned. And it clarified that as a public official, you can communicate on social media platforms if you only answer questions, provide information, or solicit information. It's not, the impermissible discussion among members of the body. And you're not using emojis or anything to like other people's and thereby comment on your opinion on something, what you think about something. You're just simply communicating information to the public. Next Thursday, we're going to have a meeting. Everybody's welcome, that kind of thing. Totally fine to do. You can also solicit information. There is a survey that you should participate in, and it's found at this address, and please go on and take part in the survey. That sort of thing is fine. It's when you start liking stuff or commenting on things that people are posting, the legislature has found that that is not okay because you're expressing your opinion about something that's going to come before you. Other members can see it, and therefore you're developing a collective concurrence outside of a noticed meeting, and that's what's prohibited. So avoid interacting with other board members' posts in such a way that it could be interpreted as a meeting of a quorum of your body. So be aware also that your posts, your comments, any discussion of agencies, city business, the business of your committee on social media, doesn't matter if it's on your own private account. It's could be something that is disclosable under the Public Records Act, probably is. So if you have a private email address and that's what you use to talk about Measure K business, Measure K committee business, then probably those emails and posts and whatnot are going to be subject to disclosure under the Public Records Act. And also, if you get going on your own private social media account, it can be transformed into a public forum where members of the public actually have rights. So be very careful about your own private posting, your own private accounts and stuff. If you put city business into that, your Measure K business into that, you can create actually a public forum where you can't keep other people off. You can't keep them out. You can't, ban them from communicating on your social media post. Rules governing meetings. There are regular meetings. There are special and emergency meetings. There are adjourned meetings. And we're going to talk a little bit about the public's right to comment at meetings. So regular meetings, so the agenda requirements are a posting of 72 hours prior to the meeting. You have to include the time and location. You have to include what is called a brief general description of each item to be discussed or addressed. And this is, kind of bedevils people sometimes because they say, well, what's a brief general description? How much do I have to provide? You have to provide enough information so that somebody who's looking at your agenda and knows nothing about any of the issues at all could understand generally what that topic is going to be about. Item number 4 is going to concerns whatever. You have to be able to explain to somebody who knows nothing about what you're doing what item number 4 is about. You also have to make notices available. You have to be in compliance with the ADA, and you have to submit, distribute in advance to people who request copies. And most of this stuff is going to be taken care of for you by your liaison. ADA requirements, as I said, meetings have to be accessible in compliance with the ADA. And if somebody needs an accommodation, like they need a auxiliary aid, a hearing device, etc., they have to make that request, and we have to honor those requests so that they can participate in the public meeting. This is an interesting little note. There is a provision in the Brown Act that says when somebody is speaking as a public speaker and they're a non-English speaking person, you have to give them double the amount of time because they're going to make their comment and then somebody is presumably going to translate that into English for them. And so it's double the amount of time. So if you have a 3-minute time limit on public speakers, they can stand and speak for 3 minutes in whatever language they're using that's not English. And then another 3 minutes has to be provided to them for translation into English. Special meetings, 24 hours notice as opposed to 72 hours. Again, have to have the time and location of the meeting and the brief general description of each item to be addressed. So exactly the same as a regular meeting, except 24 hours notice as opposed to 72. Adjourned meetings are when you continue a meeting. You have a meeting going on and it's midnight and you want to stop. If you start that meeting up again in a time period less than 5 days from the time you stop, and you don't add anything to your agenda, you can continue that meeting. Pick up where you left off. You don't have to do a new posting, except you need to post on the door or wherever you are that we've adjourned the meeting to 2 days from now at this same place, this time. We'll pick up where we left off and continue on. Emergency meetings. I have never been in an agency yet, thankfully, where we had to have an emergency meeting, because we're talking about severe impairment to public health and safety. We're talking about an earthquake, some sort of dire emergency, wildfire, a flood, and you have a 1 hour prior to the meeting, you have to give telephone notice to media organizations who've asked to be notified. You have to notify all your members, and you can't hold, generally speaking, a closed session. There are some exceptions, but you know, why would your board need to meet in an emergency meeting? I mean, I have never even had to have a council meet in an emergency meeting. Thankfully, we haven't had any kind of huge natural disaster that required that, where they had to meet, but it is available. So you can have an emergency meeting and still stay in conformance with the Brown Act. In addition to posting the agenda, the agency also has to make the agenda packet available to the public when the material is distributed to the agent, to the legislative body. So you can, I know of some cities that put out their agenda 72 hours in advance. They don't have any packet material available. You go to the meeting and there is the packet material. I would not recommend that. I don't think it's a good idea, but there's no requirement that you have to send it out at any point in time prior to the meeting. You can show up at the meeting and there's the material. The agenda is the only thing that has to actually be posted 72 hours in advance, or 24 for a special meeting. And the public has a right to comment. At every regular meeting, they have the right to directly address you on any item of public interest if that item is under your jurisdiction. And that's a pretty broad definition. People have argued for years that if they want to get up and make some sort of statement opposing something that's going on globally, that it actually, as long as they relate it to something that's happening in your particular city and your particular agency, that they have a right to do that. And that's just at your, what is called your public comment period. They get up and they talk about whatever they can, whatever they want to talk about that could conceivably relate in some way to what your jurisdiction is. Now, for agenda items, for regular agenda items, things that are listed on your agenda, the public has to be given an opportunity to comment either before the item, during the item, but at some point in time before the body makes the decision on that item. You have to have public comment. At special and even emergency meetings, they can only comment on what's on the agenda itself, items that are on the agenda itself. So you don't have any open time for public comment period, open public comment period, whatever. You don't have that at a special meeting. You only have that at a regular meeting. So you can eject somebody who is willfully disrupting your proceedings. They have to actually be disruptive. There are situations, there was one where there was a silent Nazi salute directed towards a mayor. That was not a disruption. They could not throw that person out. And people can make all kinds of remarks that are, you know, not nice, but they also can't be thrown out. And you can prohibit profanity. but you really can't make people not say things that are, not particularly nice. If you really get into a situation where you have disruptive people in a room, then you can clear the room. You have to keep people, members of the news media who are not part of the disturbance, they have to be allowed to stay. And then you can establish procedures to readmit people who were not part of the original disruption. Hopefully we never encounter anything like this. Public is allowed to record audio or video of the meeting, as long as they're not disruptive to the proceedings, they get to record. I've had people set up tripods and cameras and record public meetings because they want their own recording of it. And as long as they're not blocking ingress or egress or being disruptive in any way, they get to record the public meeting. And then if we record the public meeting, that's a public record, obviously, that people can view. Now, you can't take any action or discussion on any item that's not listed on an agenda unless you can make one of these findings. In an emergency situation, you can add things by majority vote. I, again, have not seen an emergency situation like that. By a 2/3 vote, you can add an item if there's a particular item that needs immediate action and it came to the attention of the body after the agenda was posted. I recently actually had a situation like this, and you just make a finding that by a 2/3 vote of the body that you need to take action now. You can't wait for the next meeting. And this item came to your attention after the agenda was posted, so within that 72-hour period. And then again, we talked about adjourned meetings where you can continue the meeting, and within 5 days, you can continue the consideration of those items, carryover items. And when people speak, whether it's at public comment or it's on an agenda item, there can be brief responses to statements or questions from the public, but it has to be brief because you don't want it to get into a situation where you're talking about something that's not on your agenda. There can be questions to staff for clarification, and you sometimes see at meetings where somebody will make a comment at public comment, and you'll see, the chair or the mayor or the head of the body turn to staff and say, can we get responses to this person? Could you please, get some answers for this person, by next Wednesday? And that's okay. You can certainly do that. They always you can do brief announcements about members or staff's activities. You can provide references or information to staff, and you can ask for staff to report back at a future meeting on some topic. And these are all for things that are not on your agenda. So somebody comes to public comment and says, I'm really concerned about, the speeding on Main Street. Then you can ask staff to come back at a future meeting with a presentation about what staff is doing about the speeding on Main Street. This is the old teleconferencing rule. Teleconferencing could be used, although it's by roll call. Agendas have to be posted at all the teleconference locations. Teleconference locations have to be identified on the agenda, and teleconference locations have to be accessible to the public. And finally, a quorum of the body has to be within the boundaries of the local agency. These are the old standard rules in the Brown Act about teleconferencing. We had these pre-COVID. We will go back to these after AB 361 sunsets in January 1st of 2024. So this stays in the Brown Act, and we have an overlay right now with some, COVID-inspired other rules for teleconferencing, but these stay in the Brown Act, and we'll go back to them eventually. So this is the AB 361 that just came out. You can do what we're doing right now, meeting via Zoom because there's a proclaimed state emergency. It's a COVID emergency. And there are some less restrictive Brown Act requirements. For example, we don't have to post the agenda at each one of your houses. We don't have to allow members of the public to come in and watch the meeting with you over teleconferencing from your house. In order to use the 361 rules, the council has a resolution that they review and renew it every 30 days to support continued teleconferencing. And that's because either state or local officials have imposed or recommended social distancing, or they may have to make a finding that meeting in person would present an imminent risk to the people meeting. So the council has done this, and now all of your agendas, you'll see there's a reference to a council agenda or council resolution number. And that's the one that allows us to continue to meet remotely via Zoom. Okay, that's it. I'll take questions.
Well, I have a comment, Janet.
Okay,
During the past 4 years, well, we have a group of 5, and it's extremely easy to violate the Brown Act through our emails.
yes.
So what practice we have used in the past is we went through our staff liaison, who at the time was Mary McCarthy, and who going forward, it's going to be an Anthem. And if we have questions of any nature, it's best to go through the staff liaison so that they can contact either one of us, and we don't have a serial message violation if we do that.
Correct. That is a good way to do that. So if you have a question, you don't send it out to the entire group. You just send it to Onathan. When Onathan sends you information, he may send it to the entire group. Do not reply to all.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and it could be something, you know, if he wants to know about scheduling, for example, we need to change the date of the meeting. Can everybody meet, you know, next Thursday, not this Thursday? It would be better if just to keep in the habit of just replying to Onathan,
Right.
you know, not replying to all. But if you did accidentally reply to all on that type of message, it's okay because it's only scheduling. But if he sends out, you know, we're adding something to the agenda about topic X, and he sends that to everyone, and you hit reply to all, and you say, I don't like topic X. I don't think this should be on our agenda. I think it's a really bad thing here. I think it's this, I think it's that. I'm very negative about topic X.
Yeah.
You're telling that to your entire board. And so you're conveying your position on something that's going to come before you. And maybe one person does it, but then, you know, the next person jumps in and says, well, I disagree with you, Jim. I think, you know, topic X is wonderful. I think we should do it. Everybody is signaling to everybody else what their position is on a particular topic. And the moment you hit quorum there, you've had a Brown Act violation.
Good.
So that's just the don't hit reply to all, not even for like scheduling things. Just keep in the habit of staying away from reply to all.
Okay. And I'd just like a clarification that it is okay to, at the end of an agenda, to have remarks or questions by members of the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
As
But
long
what,
as,
you know,
as long as they're not decision items.
Right. I mean, what do you want to make comments or questions about? If you want to talk about, you want to ask Jonathan, so our next agenda, we're going to see topic A, is that right? It's going to be on the next agenda, Jonathan? And he says, yes, it will be on there. That's fine. You stop it at that. You're just asking about what's going to be on the next agenda. If you ask for something to be on the agenda, hey, Jonathan, I'd really like to see on a future agenda that we have, you know, topic X. And you stop there. You don't say, because I really think topic X is important and we need to make a decision on this and it would be good for this agency, et cetera, et cetera. You don't start talking about your opinion about topic X. That's fine. You can just ask Jonathan to put something on a next agenda, no problem.
Great. Okay.
Janet, I have a couple of questions.
Okay,
With respect to the point that Jim just brought up, I used to see, I think, at the end of the meeting agenda, something called other business,
uh-huh.
kind of a catch-all for that sort of issue where you can ask a question or talk about when's the next meeting going to be. But I don't see that on the agendas very much anymore. Is that a change?
That would be up to the decision of the person writing the agenda. But at the end of a meeting, even if it's not on the agenda and you want to say to Jonathan, are we going to have such and such come on in the near future? Is that going to be on an agenda? You can ask that question.
Okay, that's fine. And I have a subsequent question. When the public speaks at the beginning of the meeting for the sort of open discussion,
Mhm.
and also when they're commenting on an agenda item, is there traditionally a limit on how much time they can spend commenting? Is it like 3 minutes, 5 minutes? Is that up to the discretion of the chair? How does that work?
Well, you should develop some kind of rules about that. A 3-minute limit is very, very common. Some places have a 5-minute limit, but that's less common. If you are having an item on your agenda and there's a huge number of members of the public who wish to speak about it, and you just know it's going to take hours to get through everybody, you can, the chair can say, you know what? There are a lot of people here tonight, and we're not going to get through till well past midnight unless we reduce the time that everybody can speak to 2 minutes. And so, the chair can say, I'm going to reduce the time. The normal time is 3 minutes, but I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes because we need to get through everybody here and we don't want to be here past midnight. And that's it. That's okay. You can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Janet, what is the practice of responding to a question that is raised by the public in the public comment periods?
So you're not really supposed to engage. There's not supposed to be back and forth. You're not supposed to really answer their questions unless it's a yes or a no or something very, very brief. There's no obligation. You don't have to answer anything. You don't have to say anything. Somebody can ask a whole series of questions and you can say, thank you for your comment.
Mhm.
This is not a question and answer session. It's a time for you to make comments, but thank you. If that's unsatisfactory to you, you can direct staff to get back to that person. Mr. Smith had a lot of questions here tonight. Obviously, we can't address them during the meeting, but Jonathan, could you get back to Mr. Smith and answer some of his questions? You can certainly do that.
Great. Any further questions of Janet? Well, thank you very much, Janet, for extending your work day and working with us this evening. This is really important. Not so, I don't want to say not so much, but there are some naysayers out there who like to catch council members or planning commissioners in violations, and this is something that's easily catchable if we violate it. So I would pay particular attention to it.
Thank you. Yes. We have had in the past, we've had numerous members of the public who will write me emails and allege Brown Act violations at all sorts of meetings. And usually not the case. We don't violate the Brown Act just on a regular basis here. But it does take some explanation to them. Maybe they've misunderstood something. Maybe they believe something happened that was wrong and it really didn't. So, not too often anymore, thankfully, but we have had people allege Brown Act violations. And so people are watching and they, they will say something if they believe something happened that was inappropriate. And that's good when they tell me about it, because it's also, we have had people go to the district attorney and allege Brown Act violations. So, and that's not so good because sometimes I'll get a letter from the district attorney that I have to respond to. And that's stressful.
I have
All
a
right.
question, actually. I'm sorry. Do you mind if
Yep.
I ask? What
Sure.
is actually the consequence if there is unintentionally a Brown Act violation? Is it
Well-
a fine? Is it? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I should have left in the sections on violations. You know, you can, there are civil and criminal penalties that can ensue, but for the most part, what happens with a Brown Act violation, if there's an allegation of a violation, it turns out it was true, that something was violated, there's a cure provision, which some people, they refer to that as a do-over. And so you have to do it over again. You have to hold the meeting and hear the item again, usually.
So the initial
Right.
decision is
Set aside.
set aside. And
Yeah,
You
and
have to
you,
hear it again.
you do it over so that you do it without the violation.
Before we leave this topic, Janet, this is Gary. Could the members get copies of the presentation that you
Sure,
put on the screen? I think that would be really helpful, at least for me.
sure.
It would be a good review.
We
Good.
could make that arrangement. And I can even, I'll include the ones that talk about the penalties and the cure provision. I'll include those slides.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Janet.
Okay, I'll leave you now.
All right. So we'll move on to item number 2, and here's where we get to know each other. So first of all, I'd like to introduce 2 key people from our city staff, Anathan Kanigsandaram and Juanita Davalos. Anathan is going to be our staff liaison as we move forward. And we will have a lot of communications. You will receive a lot of communications, I'm sure, from Juanita. So, Anathan, why don't you lead off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what position you have there in the city.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So my name is Anathan Kanigsandaram, and I'm the acting city engineer for Pleasant Hill. So as you can imagine, I oversee pretty much the engineering division at this point, and also the project manager for the lovely library. So if you have any questions on any of the projects in town or including library, I'd be happy to give you information so you know what you may seek. But also I'll be the new staff liaison and we'll be in constant contact with you if you have any questions or if you need information or provide you any information that you may need.
So getting back to the Brown Act discussion, if we have any questions of other members or any questions about what's on the agenda, that email should go to Anathan. So Juanita, you're up next. Thanks for joining us.
Well, you're welcome. And I don't know if I'll be a regular part of your meeting. I'm helping out tonight, but I'm the administrative analyst in the city manager's office, and I've met most of you through the interview process as you were finding your way to this committee. So I'm been with the city about 8 years, and I wear a variety of hats, as you will see me do various things, and my name will be associated with quite a few things. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you and to see you all again.
All right. Thanks for being here. Okay, well, my name's Jim Bonato, and I guess I'm a full-time volunteer since I retired several years ago. I spent 9 years on the Planning Commission. For the past 16 years, I've been the program manager for Pleasant Hill's Community Emergency Response Team, and currently, this current year, I'm the president of the Community Foundation. So I've been on the Measure K Oversight Committee this is my 4th year, I guess. And I look forward to working with all of you. All right, how about you, Gary?
My name's Gary Hook. I lived in Pleasant Hill for, I think, 23 years now. I retired from a corporate career around 2017 and started getting involved with the Friends of the Pleasant Hill Library. I'm currently on the board of that organization. I've been serving as their secretary for the past few years. And that's what led me to Measure K. I got to know David McDonald, very, very well. And so the members of the Friends thought I would be a good fit to represent them on this committee. And so here I am, and I'm looking forward to getting to know everybody here.
Great. Gary, what did you do prior to retirement?
I was an in-house tax lawyer for Chevron down in San Ramon.
Okay,
So I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm not practicing anymore. Happily inactive.
so the shingle is down.
The shingle is down.
All right, thanks, Gary. Ashley, how about you?
I work in commercial property management. So I'm a property manager in San Francisco, and I am semi-new to Pleasant Hill. I used to live here many years ago, but my husband and I just purchased a home last December. So we live here in Pleasant Hill and are kind of new, and we wanted to plant some roots, and I thought, why not try to get involved in my community? And this was the perfect way to do so.
Good stepping stone, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. Aslam.
Good evening, all. My name is Islam Najjar. I've been a resident of Pleasant Hill for 6 years now. Our first home was purchased here, former resident of San Ramon. I'm a mother of 4. My background is in education, and I'm currently a teacher at the co-op my children are at. And same, this is my first Measure K committee meeting. So I just have always been involved with giving back to the community. And I thought it's finally time to give back to the city that we really love now. It's just grown on us. And I've recently also become part of the diversity commission here at Pleasant Hill, and I'm chair of that now. So I'm really excited to just get to know a lot more people that are involved with Pleasant Hill, and to give back and encourage, hopefully, my children to do the same as they get older. So
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us.
of course, thank you.
John, how about you?
Thanks, Jim. Much like Eslam, I just moved, well, not just, she just moved here 6 years ago. I just moved to Pleasant Hill from San Ramon, but am a Bay Area native. My wife and I built our retirement home pre-COVID, and then 3 of our children moved back home. It was great. I am a real estate developer. I'm a CEO of a company. We were based in San Ramon, but now that I've moved to Pleasant Hill, I think we'll move somewhere a little bit closer. We develop properties throughout the Western United States. And when I saw the publication for Measure K, I thought what a great way to get involved with the city and be able to give back, meet new people, like others have said. So I welcome the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Good. I understand you also have a financial background. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I am also a CPA, and they don't let me near the books much anymore, but I'm pretty sure I have it active, and I still keep my license current.
Great. Okay. Thanks for joining us, John. How about you, Paul? So Paul, you joined us last year, right?
Well, good evening, everybody. It's nice to meet all the new members. I've been on this committee for just over a year now. And I'm on the committee by virtue of the fact that I'm also on the Traffic Safety Commission. And I've been a member of that for about little over 2 years now. And I've been a resident of Pleasant Hill for about 8 years now. I thought I was a short timer, but I guess that's quite a long time these days. I'm retired, and both of my children and their families live close by, and it's one of the reasons that we moved to Pleasant Hill. And I'm anxious to serve the community and learn about Measure K program, which I know much more about now than I did a year ago. And make sure that those funds are well spent. So I look forward to working with all of you in the year ahead.
Paul, what did you do prior to retirement?
I'm a civil engineer by training.
Okay.
And I was I worked for the the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. I was the acting executive director when I retired. So there's a connection between that and the Measure K program to some degree, and also the Traffic Safety Commission, because my background is engineering with an emphasis on transportation.
All right. Okay. Well, I didn't tell you about my background. I had a dual career. I was in manufacturing for 28 years, 14 years manufacturing ladies sportswear, and 14 years manufacturing eyeglass cases. Both industries are offshore now. Along with that, concurrently with that, I was in the Army Reserves. After college, I had 4 years active, and I stayed in the Army Reserves for 24 years. So, in any case, love doing service. So, welcome everybody, and I'm looking forward to working with you and all of the new faces that we have here. So you'll bring a new perspective to what we're doing. So that closes our introduction. So I'll move on now to the overview of Measure K. And Anathan, if you could provide that overview for us, that's good.
Absolutely. So this is going to be real quick. This is nowhere near what Janet has, put you through. So this is just going to be one slide for to share, then we're going to be done. Okay. Is everyone can see the slide? Assuming you can see it?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay. This is pretty easy and straightforward. This committee, like Oversight Committee roles and duties, is like very simple, is review semi-annual revenue and expenditure reports and provide to the City Council an annual report on whether revenues were expended efficiently and effectively. That's the key big roles that you have. And one thing just to keep in mind is this committee shall not play a role in contracting or project management for any project that is funded by Measure K. And another one to keep in mind, sometimes we tend to forget, is this committee is not charged with the decision making on spending priorities or scheduling project or detailing or even finance planning when it comes to the Measure K. Typically, it all gets handled by City Council level, and all the information will be provided to you for review when the time comes. But as far as allocating this fund to any special projects or anything else will be all discussed at the City Council level. So that's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions you may have. And as most of you are, I am new to this committee. So this is my first rodeo, so I will learn as I go along, and I'm happy to help and assist you any which way I can.
Okay. Anathan, you mentioned earlier that you were the acting engineer for the city.
Correct.
Will there be a member of the finance department that will attend future meetings?
Absolutely. So when the reports are due, when the fiscal year 2021 expenditure reports will be presented by Mary McCarthy. She's a finance manager. She will join us at that time, and she will walk you through all the paperwork, what she's good at.
Okay. So I understand Mary is retiring soon.
Yes, she is scheduled to be retired another year, but we will try to have this next meeting beforehand.
Okay. And how about Ross?
Ross still going to be with us. I'm not too sure what position he will be taking over at this point, but he will be with us.
It's hard to keep track of everybody when some people are retiring and some people are moving on. This pandemic has kind of put a pall over understanding who's who now.
Very true.
All right. Well, you mentioned on the second bullet that the committee is responsible for presenting a summary report to the city council once a year based upon an audit that we do as a committee. So that was my concern, to make sure that we had somebody from the finance team or from the finance department that's attending these meetings.
Yes, definitely. At the next, since we don't have a report to present, that's why they're not here. But on the next meeting, we will be providing you the update, and that time the finance department will be here. Finance manager or
Good.
someone from the department will be here.
Okay. Ross, I'm not sure that everybody has, excuse me, that all the new members of the committee have received a copy of Resolution 16-17 or the bylaws. Has that been sent out to the new members?
Probably not. I will be happy to send them out next day or so.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. That'll give the new members a little bit more information about who we are and how we go about doing things and what we do and what we don't do. All right, are any questions for Anathan? We're looking forward to working with you, Anathan.
Same here.
All right. Okay, this moves on. We're going to move on now to the nomination and election of officers. Okay, so I'm gonna read something here because I couldn't memorize 2 paragraphs. All right. So now we get to vote to elect our chair and our vice chair. The chair is responsible for setting the meeting dates and presiding over the meetings. The vice chair fills in if the chair cannot attend a meeting. Generally, the meetings are scheduled when all can attend. And either Anathan or Juanita will work with us to make sure that we come up with a common date that we're all available to meet. The terms for the chair and the vice chair are 2 years, and the committee meets just a few times per year. In past practice, we have met twice a year. This is the only special meeting we have, so we'll probably have 1 extra meeting this particular year. Okay, so while you think about nominations, I'll open public comment on this item. If there's members of public that are following this meeting to make a public comment, please log into or call directly into the meeting by going to www.zoom.us and entering our meeting ID number, which is 978-6315-4829. The passcode is 102774. If participating by phone, call area code 669-6833 and enter the ID and passcode. Once you're let into the meeting, please use the Zoom raise hand feature or press number 9 to raise your hand. Excuse me, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Ling, do we have any commenters waiting out there?
Not at this time.
So we're not a popular program tonight, huh? Okay.
Jim, can I
Yes.
just offer something? I don't think it was mentioned that committee members can nominate themselves. They don't have to nominate someone else. So if somebody's interested in serving as either chair or vice chair, they can nominate themselves.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so now back to the nominations of chair and vice chair. Does anyone want to nominate someone or themselves for chair? Paul, you're muted. Paul, you're muted.
Sorry. I'd like to nominate Jim Bonato to become the new chair of the committee.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul.
And
Are
Do
there
you
any
accept
other
the nomination?
Are there any other recommendations for nomination or nominations? Don't let the cat hold your tongue. All right, hearing none. Okay, so we ask for a vote on each nominee. If you're in favor of
Can
Jim
can
Bonato
I ask
being-
for a second? If you don't mind, I'll just jump in to help. Is there a second to the nomination?
John seconded.
Yeah, I will second it.
Okay. All right, if you're in favor of Jim Bonato being appointed as chair, please unmute and say aye.
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 Any noes? Hearing none, I'll get back to you next year.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Should I do public comment?
My wife is about ready to make it. You're too late, Sandy.
Too late, public comments closed?
Yes. All right. All right. Does anyone want to nominate someone or themselves for vice chair? I would like to nominate Paul Maxwell as our vice chair.
I'll second that nomination.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there
Who
any
was the
fur-
second?
Gary seconded. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right. Paul, it's back to you. All right, if you're in favor of Paul Maxwell being appointed as vice chair, please unmute and say aye.
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 Are there any nays? All right, congratulations, Paul.
All right, thank you,
All right, I give
everyone.
myself a pat on the back. Okay. All right, thank you all. I look forward to working with you all again. Okay, now we're down to the next item, which is the approval of minutes of the May 4th, 2021 meeting. That was a brief meeting, and we have brief minutes.
I will move approval of the minutes of the May 4th meeting.
And Paul, since you and I are the only members of the
Exactly,
present,
you and I.
I will second the approval of the meeting minutes. So we normally have a roll call vote. Juanita, do you want to?
Yeah, in this
Call the
instance,
roll.
since the two of you were the only committee members that were participating, it's not necessary to have a roll call vote with everybody else. It's just if the two of you agree and approve, then the minutes are approved.
All right.
Okay.
So since we both approved and seconded, that's a pass or a go.
Pass.
Good to go. Okay. All right. Well, we haven't had a whole lot of business this evening. And since we are closing in on the completion of the audit for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, we should have a meeting in the not too distant future to where we take a look at the transactions that took place in this past year. And we put together some comments to be delivered to the Pleasant Hill City Council. So Anathan and Juanita, if you could, through your emails, set up some possible meeting dates for us. We should meet, I would say, really in November or early December at the latest.
So, Jim, if I can give you some input. So, finance is working very hard to wrap everything up and double checking all their paperwork. So they will need at least till second week of November to finish it up and be ready. And we can technically have it on the third week of November, but third week is Thanksgiving week. I'm pretty sure most of you all will be busy. And possibly first week of December would be an ideal time to have. That will give enough time for the finance to have the documents ready and for everyone to, get over the other side of the Thanksgiving. And is there any particular first week of December? Would that work for everyone?
That works for me.
I'm sorry, was the suggestion that we hold the next meeting the first week of December?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay. Eslam, is that pretty much okay with your calendar?
That works for me, definitely.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm looking for the nod to the head. So, all right. So Anathan, if you could float some days of the week, some dates from the first week of December. We'll get back to you, and I'm sure there's one day that week that everybody will be available.
Okay. Any particular day that really works for everyone? A Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursdays work best for me, but I can try to rearrange things the other days. Mondays definitely don't work for me.
Yeah, Wednesday's a tough day for me also.
Okay, so
So-
I will tentatively schedule for the 2nd of December, which is a Thursday,
All right.
and hopefully it works for everyone.
Okay.
Actually, I know already that doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. I have a commitment that evening, so.
How about the 9th?
I have my company holiday event that evening, so I will be unable.
So Eslam, you mentioned that Wednesday's not a good day. Or I mentioned Wednesday. I'll take that off the table if Wednesday the 1st works.
Oh, sorry, Wednesday the 1st I'm in a conference in Phoenix. I won't be able to do that day.
Okay.
I'll be flying back. I think if we're going to do it in the evening at 6, that would I'll be on a flight.
Well, I tell you what, Anathan, why don't you, rather than us going through this process online, why don't you send an email out to all of us, and we'll get back to you with the dates that were available.
Right.
Okay.
Can I just try one more day while you're all here? How about the Tuesday, the 30th of November? I didn't hear anybody mention Tuesday.
That's good.
Okay with me.
Works.
That's good.
It works for me. The
Yeah.
30th.
Okay, great. 6 o'clock?
All right. That's good.
O'clock.
You've got the magic, Juanita.
I know, right? So there's a reason that I begged Bonita to join me tonight.
All right.
Right.
All right. So is there any further discussion, any questions that members might have?
Well, Jim, do you think it might be a good idea if we could make available to the new members the last year's report and maybe the presentation to City Council, just so they get an idea of what it is that we do? I mean, if they're interested, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, Paul. That's a great idea.
Yeah, what we did last year, I think it might be helpful.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Could we
Well, I
do-
can get a hold of David and see if he still has a copy of his presentation.
Well, does Anathan have that? Do you have that?
Yeah, we should be able to get that to everyone.
Yeah, it's part of the city council record.
Right, just to get an idea of what it is that we've done historically, I think would be helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, if anybody has a chance this week, go out and take a look at the library. It's taking shape real quick. So that's going to be open here in probably another 11, 12 months. All right. Well, thank you all for your time this evening. And I look forward to meeting you all again on the 30th of November.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.